The whole country was locked down last year because of the coronavirus that Chinese scientists made in a lab. You would think the country would be safer because more people would be inside, but the opposite happened. The United States has one of the most dangerous years in decades. According to data collected by the FBI, murders in this country increased by 25%. And in fact, that's probably a low ball. We don't have the complete data. We won't get it till later this year. But as of now, that means the United States had more than 20,000 murders last year. That's the highest number in 26 years, since 1995. That rate was higher in the big cities. In Chicago, for example, murders increased by more than 50%. In New York, by 40%. One expert at the University of Chicago said last year was, quote, the largest increase in violence we have seen since 1960. That's 61 years. So why has this happened? In a year when people were locked indoors, why are more people murdering each other? Well, the geniuses at Vox are completely baffled. Quote, we don't yet know what caused the violence, they wrote. But actually, we do know. Crime increased because there were more criminals on the streets. Fewer people, but more criminals. Now, why were there more criminals on the streets? Because politicians released them during the pandemic. According to a report from the Department of Justice, between March and June of last year, 208,500 inmates across the country received some form of expedited release. Some cities, like New York, released almost half of all its prison and jail inmates. They were, quote, released to limit inmate risk and exposure. In other words, for their safety. But what about your safety? That was not taken into consideration. Apparently, they believed it would be better for society, better for all of us, if criminals get out in the streets. And if those criminals committed more crimes, like many thousands more murders, that was worth it. By June, which was when hundreds of thousands of inmates had been released, almost 38 inmates across the country had died from the coronavirus. So it wasn't really about protecting them from this deadly pandemic. And of course, now that the coronavirus is winding down, you'd think politicians would stop releasing criminals onto the street, but they haven't stopped. They're no longer even using coronavirus as an excuse. Last month, the state of California announced that 76,000 inmates qualify for early release from prison. About a quarter of those had life sentences. What does it take to get a life sentence in California? A lot. Not someone you'd want to live next to. 76,000. Keep in mind, this is the same state, California, where you can be charged with a misdemeanor and spend 90 days in jail if you violated your stay-at-home order. Oh, becoming clear? Lock down normal, decent, law-abiding people, release the criminals. They're trying to wreck the country. You wouldn't do this if you weren't trying.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.